Becca, Jerry, Nick. Promote you to panelist. Jason, how's it going?
What's up?
Hey, I cannot hear you, but that might be
What
me
about-
because I think I muted myself.
There we go. Good.
Cool. Struggle is real. How's it going, Nick?
Oh, it's going. I'm just posting this. Decided to post this as a flash training in the group of book buyers. So
Oh, cool.
See if they join.
Right on.
See who do we got here? Becca, Darren. Becca, I have seen here before. Jerry, I've seen here before. Jason, Darren is a new name.
Darren recently bought the Certainty app. I recognize the names because I manually added the lifetime users. So, hey, Darren.
Cool. So I'll kind of give everybody a little context. If you are new or if you've been here before, just a refresher, Mondays and Fridays. So Dan and I, months ago when COVID first hit, we said, hey, we're going to show up every day. We're going to do something just to be as helpful as possible. And that morphed into a schedule of just showing up every day at, for now, 11 a.m. Pacific. That became Wednesdays are our Diamond member calls. So this is a webinar format, which means you don't have your cameras on, you don't have your mics on, and you can really only talk. You can chat to each other in the Q&A or ask us questions, or you can talk to each other in the chat or ask us questions in the Q&A. Wednesdays is a meeting format, which means our Diamond members just show up, everybody's camera is on, they can unmute themselves and ask anything they want. From there, we started doing Tuesday and Thursday teaching cash flow engineering, revenue multiplication, and Q&A. And then to bookend Monday and Friday are free trainings. So this Profit Flywheel free trainings. And we do our best to give an inside look at what we're doing, why we're doing it, the decision-making frameworks, and hopefully people keep showing up, keep implementing, and eventually just want to have a conversation and join something like cash flow engineering or the Diamond membership. So we are Profit Flywheel today, Mondays and Fridays. If you want to make sure you're on the list, you can go to profitflywheel.com and get notified. And there's a thing that drives me nuts. I totally understand it. It's one of those things where I get it. It drives me nuts, and that is a hyper focus on what Dan would call living in the marketer frame. Hyper focused on front end acquisition, and there's opportunity for multiplicative growth if we just kind of learn how to do math and learn how there's these stages and just how tweaking conversion rates along the way can exponentially grow revenues, but more importantly, profits, because the acquisition is the expensive part. So Dan has a great framework, and obviously he's a math wizard. And the hope is over the next couple flywheels, we can shift. I don't think anybody really wants to hear this at first, but we can shift the focus from front-end acquisition to doing the things that will multiply our revenues end over end.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, Andrew, Joe, Kyle, Nikita, Nolan, Dan. How's it going? Thanks for jumping on. Yeah. So over the weekend, you had your quarterly network event. So if you don't know, Nick runs a high-end mastermind called The Network. And what are there, 40 businesses that are, I don't know how many businesses are, I should know this since I'm technically a member of the network.
I think we had 42 at last count. Since last time, I should know this too, and I don't.
Just put
some churned out, some churned in, so we're right around 40.
Cool. All in different businesses or different industries, and so I attend those as much as I can. But Friday, Nolan, who's on here, my business partner, we joined kind of the preeminent accounting firm mastermind, which probably sounds painful to everybody that's on here. But ultimately, we made that decision, which I think is a wise one if you're in an industry that's late in the diffusion of innovation curve. So we talk a lot about the diffusion of innovation in all of our trainings, because it's 60 plus years worth of research on how people adopt new ideas. And so the playbook is out there already, largely for how to position your offer depending on where your offer is on the diffusion of innovation curve. And so what we realized for our accounting firm, now Nolan and I have multiple businesses. Some of you are on here because you bought our Certainty app. And so that's early in the diffusion of innovation curve. Early adopters, innovators are buying. And so the messaging and the approaches is different. For a CPA firm that's late in the diffusion of innovation curve, the shift moves from a heavy focus on innovation to how can I find the most efficient path forward, either by acquiring other businesses or by acquiring the knowledge that's already out there, the best practices within that domain. So to expedite some things on the CPA firm side, we joined a mastermind. Dan Gilly, who's on here, has a mastermind that's awesome for businesses in the automotive space. And so similar thought process. I don't know how many hundreds of clients that he's got in his group, a similar thing that's later in the diffusion curve. If you really want to scale your automotive focused business, hire Dan. He's an expert in that space. So rather than trying to acquire the knowledge on your own through failure, you can go to somebody who's already acquired all the subject matter expertise. So I just mentioned that because both in your mastermind and in masterminds that we're in, and then the individualized coaching that we do, we spend a significant amount of money trying to figure out who's the best at a specific problem and how can we get that knowledge from them, and then we share it here. In addition to the stuff that we're innovating across our various businesses. So that's some foreshadowing. I'm going to do a little bit of a share. This is not a formatted document because I just put it together briefly I think we're going to do a much more in-depth training on this on Friday. I think is the plan. But this is something we were discussing in the accounting firm specific mastermind. Nick, do you see a Excel spreadsheet that's got an area that's
blacked out?
Blacked out. Yeah. So the foreshadowing that you gave, Nick, is that more is not necessarily always the answer to solving all of your problems. In fact, sometimes more gets you away from the things that you actually want. Like you want more white space per week. The actions that you're taking might be getting you further away from having more white space per week. So what we really try to advocate is how do we make sure that the decisions that we're making are actually getting us closer to the things that we want. And the tendency is to get stuck in the marketer frame. The marketer frame is something we came up with in our cash flow engineering methodology about how do you re-engineer your cash flows to be in alignment with your revenues, or your expenses to be in alignment with your revenues. Marketer frame is being heavily focused on, I just need more leads. And we want to add some other perspectives, like the professional skeptic. CPAs are really good at the professional skeptic, which is trying to ask the deeper questions about why. Why do you actually want to do that? Why were the results that you got? Is it because your advertising is working, or is it because you just were on a bunch of podcasts, or is there seasonality? It's trying to dig deeper than just the answer being more leads, because that's not always the case. So we want to adopt the professional skeptic frame to be part of our day-to-day decision-making process. And then on a quarterly basis, we want to adopt the investor frame, which is stepping back and going, for this business that I own, or this piece of real estate or this asset that I own, would I buy it today? And if the answer is no, what do I need to change that from a no to a yes? And so we do that on more of a quarterly basis. And so the question that comes up most regularly really is this idea: how can I double my business? And it's when you adopt more of a professional skeptic frame, you see that it's not as complicated as we're all making it out to be. So let's just say we've got a business that has 100 clients, and you retain year over year 90% of them, and the average transaction value per client is $1,000, and they buy from you twice a year. So on average, they spent $2,000. So your total revenue would be 180 grand, right? And I just arrived at that by taking 100 clients at the start of the year times 90% times $1,000 times 2. If I were you, I would do this for your business. How many clients do you have? What's your retention rate? Average transaction, number of transactions per year. This is what in cash flow engineering and in revenue multiplication, all the things that we talk about is the compile phase. First, we got to get all the data in place. We always want to skip to strategize or execute before we've actually compiled. So we need to know where we're at today. And then the question is, how could I double my business over the next 2 years? Well, there's a formula, which is this right here, which is we've got this series of increases. And as long as the percentage increases across these 4 buckets add up to 38%, so magically your business will double every 2 years. So you could change this from 3% to 5%, or you could change this. You could swap these around. As long as it adds up to 38%, you're going to get to magically your revenues will double over 2 years.
I'll tell you real quick, because I think this is the important thing that hit me. A lot of people, I've seen something similar like this taught, and people miss it because living in the marketing frame, right? So let's say we understand that we need to have a 38% increase. What happens naturally if we don't actually look at this and tinker with the numbers is we need 38% more clients.
Right.
Which is really hard. If you have 100, going from 100 to 138 is a monumental task. So by understanding this math, you can make it much, much simpler. And it's also true, right, that getting 38% more clients carries a lot more risk than some of the other things.
100%. Yeah, so really what we'd say is let's increase our clients by 5%. It's 5. And then let's improve our retention rate by 3%. So we're just keeping a little bit more of that. And then how can we add a little bit more value to our offer or offers so that we can charge 20% more? And then how can we get them to buy, on average, increase the number of times they buy from us by 10%? So it's not just, usually we just go, I just need more clients, right? But if we could just narrow it, this is much easier to solve, which is I don't need that many more clients. What are a couple of initiatives that I can do to retain them? And then how could I add a little bit more value? And then how could I create the incentive for them to buy more often? Because if you look at this now, year 2, we've doubled. But we've just added over the course of that period 10 clients. And then, as you continue this process out, you can see that every 2 years basically doubles. It's a little bit more than doubling, but close enough, right? And so then the question is, well, what are the strategies for how we could do that? And we got this from our mastermind, which is actually, there are a ton of ways. These are 410 strategies, right? We get super focused over here I don't know if the highlighting shows up right now, but we've got existing clients plus new clients equals total clients. We get super hung up in the lead generation and the conversion rate stuff. This is just where we stop. And there are a ton of strategies. I can zoom in. I don't know if, of all of the different ones. Email, 9-word email, blogs, brand makeover, newsletters, podcasts. We get totally consumed by that. Again, we just need to increase our clients by 5%. So we don't need to actually do all these, although most of us are stuck here in this section of lead generation and conversion rate. But in actuality, and then you come over, we want to be considering a couple strategies from over here, and then in terms of the conversion rate and lead generation. And then what we know is, based off that formula, how can we pick a strategy or two to improve our retention rate, a strategy or two to increase our average transaction, a strategy or two to increase the number of transactions. Now we're much more well-rounded rather than just being hyper focused on lead gen and conversion rate. And of course, what this shows is that once we've improved revenue, we haven't necessarily improved profits or improved cash flow per se, if we haven't done a good job managing our expenses, managing our overall cash flow process, which is the point down here. I do have permission to give this strategy map out to clients. So if you want to see all these strategies, we'll make this available to, I guess, probably Diamond members if you want this, and kind of the associated workbooks. But it gives you 410 total strategies across all these different buckets. The point is not to try and do all of them. The point is to pick the highest leverage items. Ideally, you apply the 4 lenses methodology we apply to figure out the highest leverage thing. But the moral of the story that I want to emphasize today is that when you get hyper focused in on clients, you're kind of missing the other levers that you can play with. So I still want to beat a dead horse to see if there's any questions or comments that people have on that.
Any questions? Drop them in the Q&A. There's a Q&A down there. We can't see the chat, but we always go to Q&A first. Really, like again, repeating what I said before is, it is so much simpler. It's so much more. It's doable. It's actionable. It's a little more palatable to say, hey, I only need to get 5% more clients. It's not difficult to get people that buy an average of 2 times to buy 2.2 times on average. That's a much smaller ask than 50 more clients if you've only had 200 over the last however many years. So it's much, small levers, swing big doors, small hinges, swing big doors. Like, it's finding those little opportunities for multiplicative growth.
Yeah, because you start to deconstruct it a little bit further and go, okay, based off my existing clients, what percentage of them do I think would be willing to buy more? Because it's not 100%. It's never the all or nothing. It's what percentage would be willing to buy more. Maybe that's 30%. And how much more would they be willing to buy? And when you start to kind of break that down, usually this is what you do really well with your consulting clients. I'd like to believe the same, which is that over the course of an office day, we do these office days for half a day or full day. Basically, we're spending the first 80% of the time compiling, and analyzing, asking, like, how many clients do you have? How big is your email list? What's your retention rate? How much do you charge? When was the last time you sent an email to your list? How often do you send an email to your list? When you send an email, do you actually make an offer? Because a lot of people send emails, but they never actually make an offer. Or they do an Instagram live or Facebook live. They never make an offer. They're just teaching. So doing all of this compiling, asking all these detailed questions, ultimately to go, okay, well, from the data that we just compiled from you, it sounds like if you made an offer to your current list, there's probably some.
Dope. Got a frozen Dan. New office comes with new internet. So while Dan's frozen, buy some time. Any questions about that? If you're a Diamond member, I'll put the workbook into the member area. There we go. I'll add him back for a minute.
I'm back.
There we go.
Yep, randomly at somewhere around 15, the 20-minute mark. Emailed hates or internet hates me for a moment in my new office. Still work in progress. I'm sure everyone's tired to hear me say that, but I'm agitating Comcast and everyone on a daily basis. I'm not sure when I cut out, but I was just talking about how in our office days, your office days, or when I'm meeting with clients, really what we're trying to do is just do all that initial compiling, figuring out what are all the assets that you have that you haven't made that you're not leveraging currently, so we can figure out basically, can we improve your retention rate, increase your transaction value, increase the number of transactions per year right now, like based off your current business. If so, if you look at the spreadsheet I had before, that was 33 percentage points of the 38. It's like we could get most of the improvement that we need just from what you already have there that you've been ignoring because you've been too focused on acquiring clients. Then on the acquiring client side, it's like, well, let's just focus in on a couple of the highest leverage strategies based off the assets you already have. Let's nail that. Let's get the data, because we're just trying to get 5% lift if we got 33% from everywhere else. And we only have to get 5% lift. And now the task at hand is much easier.
And I would, just like you just did, if you've been in business for some amount of time, a year or more, I like to work backwards. It's personal preference for me. But I want to know that effort I put into when I do get to the front end, I want to know it's going to be exponentially more profitable because I've done the things to improve the retention and the average order value and all that stuff. So it's a really powerful tool. I think we'll get the workbooks and stuff in the member area and then really deep dive on Friday.
Cool. Any questions people have?
Andrew says awesome stuff. Becca, Darren, Jerry, Jason, Joe, Kyle Bogey. I know that guy. Matita, Nolan, William. Any questions about the multiplicative stuff? It's a little bit it requires a little bit more thought than the man with the hammer. I always say the man with the hammer, the consultant that comes in and has the solution before compiling the data. 100% worth the compile phase. Question: did you say you want to hit 38%?
Yeah, well, just to pull back up this spreadsheet, because that's a really important distinguishment, is that, can you see the spreadsheet?
Yes.
Let me just highlight it in yellow and make the font super big so that make sure everyone can see it. So if we take these 4 different buckets, number of clients, retention rate, average transaction value, and number of transactions, the percentage increase across all those buckets is to add up to 38%. So we could swap this around. We could swap number of clients and retention rate. We could, however, any combination that you want, as long as the total increase across those 4 adds up to 38%. If that's the case, then every 2 years, the business will double in revenues.
Yep.
So if you just went 38%, 0, 0, 0, you're getting roughly the same thing. So the point being, most of us just try to do 38% client.
William says work smarter instead of harder. Yeah, this is my favorite methodology for just sitting down and saying, hey, what do we need to focus on? Let's pick one. You can typically find a low hanging fruit. Generally speaking, if you've lived in the marketer frame for years, you probably have a ton of time, effort, and resources on the client acquisition side, and a big gaping hole on the retention or the number of transactions. On the flip side, if you've always been maybe a relationship person and you just kept people forever, you know 3, 4, 5 years, never done any real marketing, just kept people forever. There's probably a big gaping hole right near the front of that, the marketing, sales, and acquisition. I'm a solar guy, so my offering should be once in a lifetime purchase. So there's basically no retention. I will argue with that shortly. Am I just in the wrong industry, or should I try to find complementary offers for each client?
I'll let you go first. I'll let you argue with that.
So I have a podcast called Preeminence Unleashed, and the whole concept is preeminence, which is being a leader in your field. And my partner in that always says it is your responsibility to provide options, opportunities, and offers to improve their life, whether it's with you or not. So you kind of answered your own question. Complementary offers for each client, add-ons, subscriptions for maintenance, all that kind of stuff. That's the first place I would look if you want to look at the, because it's a number of purchases, it's a number of transactions. So if they buy a bunch of other stuff through you, you're still increasing the number of transactions. That's probably the first place I would look for anything that's lifetime. There's maintenance and there's complementary offers. The idea is the assumption is you know something they don't know, or you have some sort of knowledge about a thing. And this is a case where through your marketing, your sales, your delivery, your fulfillment, you want to kind of position as a trusted advisor so that a whole bunch of the strategies will probably work. You just won't be selling them more of the same thing. Like if you go through that list and go through the strategies, there's a million things I'm sure that you could sell them, or that they would rather buy through you because they trust you. So I would probably look there.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't think I have anything meaningful to add to that. That's well said. Jerry asks, what percentage of business owners you talk to don't know this?
Knowing a thing and doing a thing are very different.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that most 75 to 80% understand that there's more than just client acquisition. You would do an interview intake and they would talk about, espouse the importance of operational excellence and customer service and repeat business. And they'd say something like, referrals are the lifeblood of my business, right? And so you'd have all that, and then all of the questions would be about, how do I get more clients? And when you start to press on things like, what is your retention rate? What is your average transaction value? How many transactions per year? They don't know that data. And they don't have a roadmap for what those specific strategies are. And so 80% plus the opposite direction, don't have any specific retention strategies, don't know the data, aren't necessarily actively working to improve those, don't have specific targets, don't have quarterly plans, aren't applying the investor frame or the professional skeptic frame. It's all marketer frame. I need more clients.
And just the framework, I think the framework, the seeing how it fits as a whole, because in Dan's example there, 10% increase in average transaction value, right? So it went from, or was it 20%? Went from 1,000 to 1,200. So people may understand increased average transaction and go from 1,000 to 3,200 because it sounds good, and not having a methodology for really figuring out what do we actually need to accomplish here. Like if we can raise this by this and this by this, very few people are going to raise their price from 1,000 to 1,200. Especially in the high ticket world, they're going to go from 1,000 to 5,000, just because they don't understand how all this math can work together to reach their goals.
It's so true. Yeah, it's going to go. There's going to be a massive. My prices are too low, so I'm going to do a 3,000% increase. And so there's not a systematic framework to it. They also haven't thought about how can I add some things that are high value but relatively low cost. Right. So there's we got something from our mastermind about how I'll pull it up real quick if you give me a second, Nick.
Yep.
About how when the billable hour was created. It's pretty funny.
While he pulls that up, I'll buy some. The other thing to remember is my world more than Dan's, because I live in a little bit heavier marketing heavy world. A lot of quote unquote business consultants teaching this stuff actually teach marketing and sales. And so while people understand this other stuff, it's why I wrote the book, Customers for Life. It was retention, referrals, and raving fans. It was everything after the sale. People are getting into business and they may understand this stuff, but all their coaching, all their consulting, everything they read is all about the marketing frame. It's all about acquisition. And so it's just, there's not a lot of support. And this is the fundamental problem with the marketing frame, in my opinion, is there are absolutely resources out there for this, like what Dan's talking about right now. But they don't spend as much time marketing and selling themselves because they understand what we're talking about. So it's people that live in the marketing and sales frame that generally are the ones that are front and center because they live in the frame of getting attention.
You see my slide?
Yep.
I just pulled this up. So a billable hour created 1919. This is just, again, from our mastermind about why would you operate an outdated model developed by your great granddaddy. Point being, that was emphasized is when you're thinking about raising prices, we kind of go from like, well, it's going to be an extra hour to do this, so we should add another $200 or $250, rather than working in how much additional value can we add? What can we charge for that? It's just the value-based pricing shift that I think we're all probably fairly accustomed to thinking about. But it's just kind of working backwards from what are the goals of our client? What are they really trying to achieve? What would be the highest value thing for them? And can that be delivered in a cost efficient way? Because you may be able to get that 20% increase in cost with or 20% increase in revenue with a 1 or 2% increase in cost to deliver that additional thing that they want. So you don't have to go from 1,000 to 5,000. It's a totally different way to sell too. So the myth that people have is that I can just increase my prices, but selling a $1,000 thing versus selling a $5,000 thing are just different sales cycle.
There's an assumption, and it's taught that we make an assumption, but it's also in a lot of the teaching is that like buyers are going to they'll buy 1,000, they'll buy 5,000. Not necessarily true. Could be way more effort to sell one over the other. It depends on the industry. Sometimes it's easier to sell the more expensive thing. But there's also an assumption that we make that people are going to do what they're going to do, right? I'm going to make the sale and then they're going to stay around for 3 months. And that's it. Like they're just going to stay around. No matter what I do, the value's there. I deliver the value. We're not being deliberate about how we're showing them the value and how we're keeping them around. So it would be the equivalent of if Dan was like, yeah, they come in, we deliver great service. So they're either going to like it or they're not. And there are a lot of people are doing that where it's like, nah, if you just change your welcome email a little bit and you just added one phone call, they might stay an extra 6 months, which is a ton of money per client. So that a lot of people I talk to, there's just an assumption that people usually quit after 4 months. Nothing we can do about it. That's just what they're going to do, which is not at all true.
Yeah, it's a habit that gets built up over time, right? And reinforced. It's the idea that the system is perfectly designed to produce the outcome.
Yep.
So whatever outcome you're getting currently, the system you've designed is perfectly created to generate that specific outcome. So if you want a different outcome, you have to change the system. That's from I think his name is Dan Heath. The Heath brothers. There's Dan and Chip Heath. I think that's from Dan Heath's most recent book about how every system is perfectly creating the outcome. So if you want a different outcome, you got to change the system.
That's a whole nother conversation, but that's why I'm super nervous when people are like, all right, I don't want to do this anymore. I got to systematize it. Plug in systems. You better be sure that's the outcome you want, because you will build and optimize that system.
Yeah, I think we get a little bit of criticism sometimes, or frustration from clients when we're like, I think you want to hold off on automating right now because you don't have enough data to know if your current system is actually going to produce the outcomes that you want. And so you may automate this too soon. And now it's going to perfectly create the outcome. It's just not the outcome that you intended. So we got to get enough data, what we say preponderance of data from whatever the thing is we're doing, whatever the system is we have. Know that that's the outcomes that we want, and then we can automate it. Which I think I see Matita on here. I think that's what she teaches as well for her clients.
Yep. Q question. She just had that 2-hour conversation today.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions about I've always referred to it as multiplicative growth versus the additive. But there's so many strategies, there's so many places to look. And it's just some of it's so simple. We've had, I have a friend who sends emails. His offer is, he just tests hundreds of thousands of emails. And it's like $200 a month or something. But he'll say, hey, so if you remember, if he just sends you the emails that are working, he says, hey, replace your welcome email with this one. Replace your onboarding email with this one. And the data is astonishing. Like when you look at lifetime value, just from changing the welcome email. Little stuff like that, why not?
Right.
So lots of places to look.
All right. Well, we'll see if there's any questions. Otherwise, for those of you who are new, when there aren't questions, then Nick and I just start talking about we start using this time to be productive and work through the things that we're doing in our respective businesses. So you can be somewhat of a fly on the wall in that. So we'll see what questions people have. Otherwise, we can start kind of jamming on the things that we're doing.
Curious about Andrew. Andrew's been quiet lately.
Oh, is he on here today? Oh yeah, there he is. Oh yeah, he said awesome stuff. Andrew, what's going on? Yeah, I'm here. Okay.
What are you working on?
Yeah, what are you working on? Oh, out of town. All right. Vacation? People are vacationing these days?
Yeah, I didn't even know you could go out of town. I went out of town a couple weeks ago and I had to have a letter that said I was an essential. So I just wrote myself a letter saying I was essential. 77 courses. Sweet.
It's awesome. What kind of course?
Yeah. In a week and a half.
Lead generation masterclass. Cool. Well, on Friday, Nick was gone because he was teaching he was working through his mastermind. And so I asked him, is there anything that I'm not allowed to talk about while you're out? You said no. So
Yeah.
Okay, well, since you said no.
I was like, no. And then I was like, oh, whatever.
Okay.
Well, it's too late.
So we didn't. There was not really any build up to teasing this because I just like while you were out, while the parent was gone, basically the wall of no. Nick is the wall of no in our relationship.
Which is hilarious
It
because
just
I'm the exact opposite in every other.
it just agitates. I just like to agitate you with things that I know that you don't want to be labeled as. But so basically, I shared that for folks who join our Diamond membership, and there's several people who are on here already who are Diamond members. Diamond members is you just get access to everything that all of our courses, current courses, new courses. So we're going to turn this double your revenue thing into a systematic little program. Anything new that we do, you get access to. We're going through tax optimization right now, so documenting all the strategies that our CPA firm uses in a way that as a member of our community, you could go in and get access to all the templates and trainings and stuff and implement it on your own if you wanted to. So basically, Diamond members get access to all that stuff, and then 3 private calls a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then all the other stuff that so like that action plan document with all the strategies. We'll post that. I've shared a bunch of HR documents that we've built internally and spent a lot of money. So you just get basically all of those things. But we decided to add 2 things, which again, Nick wasn't here, so there was no teasing leading up to it, and he couldn't tell me no.
I'm really excited to hear what they are.
So one is all the existing Diamond members, you get an office day. So office day is where we, blurry all of a sudden. Office day is where we basically will currently virtually meet with you for half a day or a day, go through the whole compile phase, try to identify basically where are the quick wins, where are the levers that we can pull, and where's the 5%, the 20%, the 10% in your business to get you to that exponential growth. So current members and the next 10 who sign up will get an office day, which Nick normally sells for $5,000 each.
It depends on if I want to work with them or not.
Right.
Somewhere between 5 and a lot more than 5.
So everyone gets an office day, all the current members plus any new folks. And then we are launching a quarterly Seeking Certainty Summit where hopefully we'll get some of our friends back. So I mentioned the investor frame earlier, that idea that once a quarter you should be stepping back and looking at your businesses, your portfolio, and going through that process of would I buy the things that I already own? And if not, what are the action steps? So we're going to bring on once a quarter the kind of some of our friends to do a kind of investor frame type Seeking Certainty type summit to help guide you through that conversation that you need to be having with yourself. Nick, I mentioned some of this, but who are some of the friends that we had on at the start of all of this?
Oh man. Well, we had Bank of New York, Rachel from Bank of New York, who has the Bank of Banks. And the reason I always go to them, or I always refer to them, is when you talk about preponderance of data, nobody has more data than they do.
They manage 37 trillion, 1/4 of all global assets, global transactions basically go through their bank.
And then we had Bernstein. We had Aaron from Bernstein. Again, thing that I like about them, and starting with the people that maybe you don't know yet, if you're listening, a lot of people might say like, who the hell's Bernstein? But they don't market. They put all of that money into research. So they're very, very valuable when we're talking about certainty. We're talking about the unknown. We're talking about how to handle some of the stuff that we've just gone through and that may be coming. So the Bank of New York,
something like $200 million a year in research on things like, I hear that this is just an example from a few years back. I hear that China is going to get heavily involved in auto manufacturing. should I invest? So what they would do is they went and they bought a bunch of vehicles from Chinese manufacturers. They flew them to Germany. They basically took them out on a track, beat up the vehicles for a while, then disassembled them and checked the quality of the parts to see what the wear and tear was. And they concluded that the quality of the materials wasn't sufficient to compete with US and European and Japanese automakers. So it's not just the conventional, like, let's look at the economic markets and let's look at the balance sheets and P&Ls of businesses. They actually go out, and if it's automotive industry, they're going to go out and do that type of research. If it's restaurants or pick any vertical, they bring in people who are experts at operating those types of businesses, and they actually do some hardcore research. So we're strategic partners with both those. Bernstein, we're the only West Coast partner. BNY, I think we may be the only West Coast partner, certainly the only Northwest partner. So that gives us access to all of their internal research, which is pretty neat.
The stuff they shared, with us when we first had them on was it's phenomenal. And it's grounded in evidence, and they have the benefit, I think, of having that evidence in the data, but also they have clients, right? So they're working with people, and they understand the concerns and the questions that we have beforehand. So they typically, both times, in both cases, were prepared to be extremely helpful, and they know the answers to the questions. If they don't, they'll tell you, and they also know what questions we should be asking. That's kind of the big one for me.
Yeah, Rachel from BNY has an unfair advantage because it's actually BNY Mellon, and her maiden name is Rachel Mellon, and that's not a coincidence. Mm-hmm. So her family started the Mellon portion.
Yeah, I remember hearing. I think you told me her average client is 100 million under management.
Yeah.
So, you want to talk about reaching your financial goals and all those other goals? Great. And then we have people like Jeff Spencer. Dr. Jeff Spencer you want to talk about seeking certainty and getting to the things that actually matter to you. He has led Fortune 500 CEOs, multiple gold medalists, Olympic gold medalist athletes on really
48, not just multiple, 48.
48 Olympic gold medals, bunch of but now he works primarily with CEOs in large companies. So the Jim Quicks and the Chris Voss really understands how to get to those things that matter to you in the process, and how to integrate it all, your business, your life, the things that matter, the things to avoid, how to not blow yourself up, which is a pretty important thing. So those are some of the people that I'm confident we can bring back.
We had Chris Voss on in the past.
Mm-hmm. Chris Voss, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, who is one of those, perhaps the best in the world at what she does. Yeah. Jason Redman was fun.
He was.
Ray Care. It's Ray Cash on his Instagram, but Ray Care was fun.
Becca says, just tried the new password for my new Diamond membership today. Still can't get my login and password to work. Okay, we'll look at that off after this meeting.
I can tell you.
You can always send issues. You can also send an email to questions@Wealth Q&A. That's basically the customer service line.
And I fixed this before for you. There was a spelling error. So let me
All right,
because there you go.
So basically, while you were out, I promised that once a quarter we're going to get our friends to come on and talk about and do like a half-day summit, action-packed, and then everybody gets an office day. Current members, and then the next 10 people who sign up. So
cfeclass.com. /diamond. If you want to go check it out, there's a little bit of information about it there.
And then this weekend, we've been talking about talking about the long-term play for the app. So you want to talk about that now, or do you think we should wait?
I was reading Andrew saying best investment ever.
I like that. I think Andrew got in when it was like $50 a month.
He got in on before the most recent price.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But that's what we did. We grandfather people in.
Yeah.
So he'd probably just jump in now, or wait and pay more later. That's fine. Last month he said, app.
Because once we get 10 people, the next 10 people in, then we're going to raise the price. Basically, it's more of the story.
You know, what'd be cool. I was just thinking about this. Is what happens, guys, when you have questions? Is building this like multiplicative, double your business training, and then rolling out either in Flywheel or on another day. Like, here's just break down one strategy a week or one strategy a month to fill in the different columns.
Like one retention strategy and one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That would be worth the Diamond membership alone.
We have 410 that we can work from just from that sheet that I pulled up.
Perfect. So we got 10 years of
we got
strategies.
No shortage of stuff.
We're doing Wednesdays too, because then we can workshop with people in the Diamond.
Yeah, that sounds good. We should do that. That'll slow down the desire that I have to do something entirely new, like every 2 months. So we can just work off that list. For the app, so we're working backwards from basically a year out. So we exchanged a bunch of text messages on that. So the idea is basically, because we've been asked by a bunch of people about creating an affiliate program. And so what are we going to do? Basically, if we're going to do an affiliate program, we don't want to run into the same problems that like a ClickFunnels ran into, where they had to reshape the entire structure to get the valuation of the business up because they want to sell it. Like I don't know if that's inside news or it's fairly obvious.
It's public now. Nathan Lotka made it public.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, they had to restructure and they pissed off a bunch of affiliates by changing the shape and nature of it. So we're trying to be mindful of avoiding that landmine. So
can you tell if he's frozen or being thoughtful, or both? Becca, glad you got in. If you have any issues, just questions@wealthqa.com. And we'll make sure that. There we go. He's back.
A lot of swearing over here every time that happens. It kills me. I thought about maybe signing in with my phone at the same time so that if my internet just cuts out, then I just switch over to my phone.
We got to sort it out so when we have our recording studio, it's all smooth.
Yeah. So Darren, I just moved into a new office and there's some issue with the wiring. So trying to get that sorted out with building management, which is, as you might imagine, a slow process. Where'd I cut out? Oh, I was just talking about the affiliate program and how we're going to most likely build a credential. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think that's actually that's the first question before affiliates. We got questions about could I be, back when you taught cash flow engineering, people are asking if they could be cash flow engineering certified.
Yeah, mostly a lot of the people who are in our CPA community.
Mm-hmm.
So a bunch of people who are members happen to be CPAs or accountants, just in part because of my background and when we launched this originally a year ago. So a bunch of people who wanted to get credentialed in the whole cash flow engineering thing probably said they could sell it. But then when we transitioned to revenue multiplication and basically the process to add new additional revenue streams, and we had some marketing folks who wanted to know how to do that or get kind of credentialed in how to sell that. So
I think the whole idea is with the certification or the credentials, it's helping people get closer to the things that actually matter to them. You got a whole bunch of people driving up leads. We got a whole bunch of people teaching sales, a whole bunch of people maybe doing line by line accounting. Obviously coaches and consultants on one end, accountants on the other. The question is, can we methodically get our clients closer to the things that actually matter to them? Can we get them to understand that that's what we want to do? And then can we just systematically get them closer to the things that matter? So that's what all of my front end messaging is going to be, is that, getting closer to things that matter is more important than having more stuff. And hopefully that creates a whole bunch of people that understand that and are interested in that. And then hopefully we can build an army of people that can help people actually walk through that process and use the app as the tool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's basically a platform play. So if you look at if you look at Microsoft or Apple or Google, those are of course technology companies, but if you look at the businesses, even Facebooks, et cetera, you find numerous different examples, not just in technology, but of businesses that have really grown and scaled. Primarily the thing they had in common is that they created a platform. And so I've been doing a bunch of research. One of my coaches has me reading I'm only allowed to read one chapter per week. Basically, I was allowed to read the first 3 chapters in the first week, and then I'm only allowed to read one chapter a week after that. I sent it to you. I think you read the entire book, your first day.
Yeah, it's a smooth read. It's well written.
Yeah, it is well written. It is a little bit more technical though. It's not like it's written from 3 PhDs. It's not as dense as The Diffusion of Innovation. It's not anywhere close to that dense, but it's not as smooth as How to Fly a Horse. Basically, there's a couple books that we urge people to read. How to Fly a Horse, that would be number 1 if you're looking to be innovative. Andrew says still reading How to Fly a Horse. Are you enjoying it? Curious your thoughts. It's one of my top 5 favorite books. For the ease of read, but also just the themes about innovation and some of the myths that it distills. First part is a bit slow. That's fair. Yeah. We also enjoyed the future of innovation. So maybe we're not the best source of if something is a fast read or not, given what we have a tendency to want to consume. So we've been researching platforms, and essentially what we're trying to do is create a platform around certainty. So there's the decision frameworks. How do you actually systematically get closer to the things that you want? What are the ways that you process issues? And so that's why we have the Certainty app and where it's evolving to in terms of the business tools that'll be coming out in the coming months. Right now, it's just a light version on the individual side, the personal side of getting clear on your priorities, but ultimately is going to evaluate your business to assess how ready it is to take on additional risk or opportunities. So we've got the app, we've got Seeking Certainty book, which is distilling down all of the principles that we teach across multiple different courses, but ultimately similar to what they did with the whole idea of funnel hacking, which is how do you become an expert in helping people achieve certainty, which more than anything, the data says that's what people really want, is part of the equation. Anxiety equals uncertainty times powerlessness. If we're trying to all have less anxiety, and we got to drive down our uncertainty and increase our power. So we're trying to create the platform around that specific thing. So it's tools like apps, education, um, principles and frameworks, and then ultimately creating a army of folks of some sort that are um, systematically out there trying to teach those same frameworks.
And if it should
So
be,
we're reverse engineering that, right?
yep. And it should be help. It should be one of the benefits is you should be able to piggyback off of a whole bunch of our marketing. If we can educate people on certainty, there should be a ton of people ready to work with people that are certified or credentialed.
Yeah.
So that's what we're working on. And I've dropped in the comments here, but if you're a Diamond member and you come specifically to Wednesdays, where Dan and I just share what we're doing in real time, you can, goes back to almost how to fly a horse. You can watch our little mistakes we make, watch how we pivot. And then when Dan turns around and sells it for $300 million or whatever, and you go, how do you do that? You have the playbook. You just go back to our calls, because we build quite a bit of it in real time, live.
Yeah, we've said this a bunch of times, but we sold out of our 100 founding members users to the app, and just about only a few people actually saw what it looked like.
Mm-hmm.
But that was premeditated basically a year ago. So now it looks like, oh wow, you guys sold a bunch of users in a couple of days, and there was a broader strategy at play, which is kind of what How to Fly a Horse talks about, which is people think that there's this overnight success, that you're some overnight genius, but the data really shows that it's hours of study, hundreds of hours, thousands of hours of preparation that then lead to that like inflection moment. So yeah, on Wednesdays we basically share what the plan is, how we're going to do that, how we're adjusting to the data, what micro steps we're taking, why we're pivoting. Wednesday we can probably talk about why we're going to teach the double revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we don't have just to tease that, a lot of people buy. We sell a lot of the 7-step. So we sell an offer that's $7, 7 steps to cash. And that's our current primary front end offer. And then people will typically buy a $37 bump, and then a percentage will buy a couple other things. And then eventually they become platinum or diamond members. And it works right now. We've driven up our average ticket price in the front end pretty significantly over the last couple of months, but it's not a true lead domino. So in our program on how to cut the risk in half, we talk about logarithmic searching, basically this process of systematically getting to the right answer to solve a problem. And so we've got the $7 offer. It's not a lead domino offer in the sense that it's not the highest leverage. So we're basically using this logarithmic searching approach to figure out the lead domino, the thing that you should sell that unlocks the broader potential. You did like 4 hours on this on Saturday about lead domino, and I just tried to explain it in like a minute and a half and botched it.
It's really, really hard. And we're over time, so I won't go too deep into it, but it's really, really difficult. It's simple. Simple is not easy. It's difficult because what anybody on this call, you're probably really good at what you do. What you consider a no-brainer lead domino is probably still way above what most of your market is ready for. Like when we talk about the Maslow's hierarchy, what you consider to be at the bottom there is not actually. And what I mean by that is like I'll use Dan as an example, or an accountant as an example, who understands planning and knows that planning is really, really important and feels like everybody needs to have it. Therefore, it feels like it's a physiological need, but it's actually not. A lot of people survive without financial planning. So it's really hard to find that lead domino and get out of our own heads enough, because the thing that we know, like everybody needs to eat more protein, that's not actually a physiological need, because people are surviving just fine the way they're eating now. They may not be healthy, but that's what makes the lead domino so difficult for service providers, is that it's really hard to get down, like it's called the base knowledge disconnect. It's really hard to figure out that thing that they understand that they need. We know they need it, they don't. It's not a lead domino then.
Yep.
So it's a process for people that are really, the better you are at what you do, the more difficult it is to find a lead domino typically.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, what you know as a former professional strongman, what you know about fitness and what you would say is essential, right? 99.999% of the world doesn't even know, like, is a thing.
One of the reasons I removed myself from the fitness industry, because there's a lot of money there, is I just, at the time, was not willing to say the things that would attract people. So the lead domino stuff to put out in fitness, I'm just not willing to say those things. It's one of the reasons why I had to get out of fitness and have not gotten back into it, even though it is low-hanging fruit, is the lead dominoes are just difficult.
Yep. Cool. So probably Tuesday or Wednesday, we'll break that down in more detail.
So if you want to come Wednesday, cfeclass.com, Diamond members are the only ones allowed on Wednesday. And we'll break down this whole entire framework on Friday, workshop through it on Wednesdays, and hopefully be able to deliver it to Diamond members. Dan and I have to sort out the logistics, but if we could roll out one, revenue multiplier, or I don't know what we would call it yet, but give you one of those a week or one of those a month, and it's then all you have to do is implement it.
Let's do it. That sounds fun.
Cool.
Probably one a week. Then we'll just have 10 years worth of content.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. Hopefully see you all tomorrow.
Yep.
Bye, Nick.
See you guys tomorrow.